I got none.
Whoa, everybody kind of went, ooh.
Yep. Hi, everyone. We are officially live. Welcome to COVID Convos, freezing ass cold edition. We're here on this very chilly Tuesday night, wishing everyone a lot of warmth. And we are gonna maybe start, I think, just by introducing ourselves and sort of like where we are. We're missing Marsha because her daughter was like, "Mom, you got to show up at a school thing." And so that's a true story. And you do have to show up at a school thing when your kids are like, show up at a school thing. So she has bowed out in order to parent. And Karen is also not available tonight. So we have some folks here, especially looking at Adrian, who hasn't been here in a while, hasn't been here before. And then Uzoma, who we haven't seen in a couple weeks. So, hey. Nice to see you guys. So maybe let's just start with introductions. How's everybody doing? Someone's got to talk, y'all.
I'm good. I'm fangirling out.
Levi, start it up.
No, Adrian unmuted first, so Adrian can go. Just kidding. I'll go.
Guys, all right, Adrian. Okay, Adrian, tell us everything. What brings you here?
My name is Adrian. I'm 40 years old. No, I'm the director of housing at the Main Street Project. So number one, I'm super happy to be here because I'm all super fans of you guys and I watch this every 2 weeks. So as much as you don't believe that I'm fangirling out, I absolutely am. And number two, I just wanted to talk with my peeps about life because I feel like when I tune in every second week, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. Oh yeah. And I sit here and have this like conversation with you guys, but I'm in my house. So I oversee the low barrier shelter and the van outreach and our housing, which is supportive and transitional. And yeah, we're just living that COVID life. So I was saying this is the 1 year mark of, I think, the first case of COVID. So it's such a weird place and a weird time. But thanks for having me tonight.
Thanks for coming. And you've been working harder been more open in your work this whole past year.
Yeah.
Really in lots of ways. And where everyone else shut down, your work involved opening right the hell up, right?
Yeah, for sure. We opened larger spaces and isolation spaces and increased a bunch of our services. And I got to give a shout out first and foremost to the frontline staff. They are the only reason we do what we do and we can continue to do what we do. It's incredible. But yeah, we had no time off and no time at home. And but at the end of the day, neither did people who are living outside. So yeah.
Great. Well, we're excited to have you here and get you to tell us a little bit about what the past year has been like for you. But we're gonna scooch over to Uzoma next to introduce themselves, and then we'll get back into it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Uzoma Asaguera. I'm a registered psychiatric nurse, addiction specialist, and I am the NDP MLA for the constituency of Union Station. It's been a minute since I've been a part of COVID Convos, but it's really, really nice to see your faces. I have been staying up on the conversations and hearing what's going on for folks. So it's been pretty wonderful to see the information that's come out of COVID Convos and seeing people engage within that dialogue. So thanks to the folks who keep it happening, keep it going. And it's really nice to be back with the group. And it's really good to meet you, Adrian. And thank you for everything that you're doing.
And then I see, oh my gosh, the comments are blowing up. Miran's is watching right now and is of course like emojiing like a maniac. It's a beautiful thing. So nice to see you too. And just for anyone who's watching, just feel free to ask any questions if you have any. We'll do our best to answer them. Or if you have questions that are very specifically public health related, we can't kind of tackle them between the four of us, then we will grab them and then get answers for you for next time. So feel free to pop in and let us know. Alrighty, let's scooch over to Levi and then we'll circle back.
Circle back. The language of Zoom. Circle back.
Oh my God, honestly.
Hi everyone, I am Levi Foy. I am the executive director at Sunshine House. So we are really, really fortunate that we get to like host this on our platforms and that people share their knowledge and their experiences with us every couple of weeks or everybody. And we're really lucky in a lot of ways because lots of people trust us all the time. And so it's really, really cool to be kind of in that space. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited. We get to see Uzoma again. I talked to them yesterday and it was so refreshing and so nice. And of course, Adrian and we go way back. So it's really good to have Adrian on the show. And Adrian is like one of our biggest bingo supporters there ever was. Tuned into the disaster that was Sunday, but it was a beautiful disaster like we do. And I see everybody in the comments, and thanks for all the love and the support from all of you too. Like I'm really excited for this evening. It always lifts me up in different ways.
Cool. Alrighty. And then I'm Maggie, and I'm also a nurse, and but mostly I just talk about sex and drugs in my regular life, and harm reduction, and trying to shift policy and practice of organizations in Manitoba, because we kind of live often in a spot where where sometimes we balance, have this weird balance in my practical life. Like I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it's like a mix of like super cool and bonkers innovation, and then like random spots where we're like, it's like 1981. And so it's like this weird combo of things that happens. And so like, that is kind of my life, is being like, that's really cool. And also like, we can make some shifts in our practice. And so I think that COVID has been like, whatever, it's been like pure hell, let's be real. But also we've seen a lot of opportunities for things to shift. And we've talked about this a million times about how, the goal can't be going back to how things were. And so how do we kind of keep things moving forward, or like take the things that have really worked and build off of that? So like thinking about like the ways that Sunshine House and Main Street Project responded, using like really centering like love and care and public health knowledge and information to continue to provide services like that. I think like thinking about how we can do both, like how we can take care of our teams and also continue to care for the people that we are connected to. So anyways, that's my random introduction. What the hell's been happening? It's January. How are you guys doing? Are you surviving? How's it? What's up?
Oh, you can see when I unmute. I see that. Okay. So then when I want to make a comment, I can't hide it. January's crazy. And it's exactly what you said, Maggie. It's like we're in this weird place where we spent a year prioritizing COVID response, and now it's winter. And so like we're trying to talk about how to prioritize cold over COVID. And so how do we make those decisions? Like, do we kind of forego COVID because now we're a year into it and care about people who can't be warm and can't get in places and can't, or do we still uphold some of those COVID things? And that's a really, really difficult place right now to navigate, especially with these minus 40s. And it's supposed to be minus 45 in the morning. Like it's inhumane, the weather that people have to deal with. So we're just trying to figure out how to balance all of that. And it's really hard on people's hearts and hard on people who are don't have services or don't even want services. Like people are just living outside and staff, and like it's just a really tough place to be right now. January is really tough, and it's the end of January, which I can't even believe.
I know, it's shocking. And it's so hard when that like those kinds of ethical moments in time where you're like, what do we have to, because we are not adequately resourced. So what do we have to give up in order to keep the most people alive in the immediate, is like a real fucked up thing to have to be thinking about, especially since that's not the way that you want to be working, I'm sorry. So what are you guys doing? Are you like, we're just letting people in?
Yeah. Yeah. Like we have cold weather protocols for sure that we're looking at every single day. And it does forego some of the COVID stuff. And we're even re-looking at, we spent since December, especially not doing safe rides, which, I mean, we did almost 100 safe rides a month through van outreach. Yeah. We stopped that because we went into extreme code red. And now we're having discussions this week going but part of the problem then is if there's not space to take people to, or if people, like where, even if we wanted to do that, it's a bit of a struggle because there's not space on the other end. So it's all a continuum, right? And it's all reliant on every other piece to it. And so, we're just reevaluating day by day, everything. And it may change tomorrow, and it may change different from yesterday, and it may be different next week. But like I said, I got to say the staff, that's one thing we don't really have to, like, we know where their hearts are. And a lot of times they're like, no, we're letting people in the lobby. No, we're just doing this. No, we're just, so it's not such a battle, at least in our organization, from the heart to prioritize people. Staff want to do it. We just have to make sure that they're doing it in the safest way, which is tough.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, it makes sense to, it's really a harm reduction, like a horrible harm reduction moment in time, right? Where you have to we have to decide what level of risk we are going to be taking in order to prioritize keeping people alive in cold like this. Like, it's wildly freezing out there. So we do the best we can. I'm glad you have a team that's like, I guess we're doing this. Here we go. And I feel like there's ways to do that pretty safely. Like, I don't know, like Levi and Uzoma, what do you guys think? Like, I feel like there's like possibility in there for public health kind of protocols.
Well, it's interesting to listen to Adrian talk about, what you folks are navigating, and then use the word continuum. Right? Because when I think about healthcare, I think about public health, I think about resources and all of that, one of the things that we've seen during this pandemic is the organizations and the grassroots level efforts that fill those gaps, so that when we think about the continuum of care, it's folks who are really filling in those important, like, basic needs in these gap areas that would otherwise see people totally drop off. And I'm not saying that's what Main Street Project is. I'm saying, because you folks are like, you do a million and one things actually. But what I'm saying is that, when we think about how folks are cared for, how folks access care, what that means, there are just so many different needs that have to be met in order to ensure that there's a good continuum. Everything from social interaction and housing and staying warm and food security and mental health. And, it's really hard in these cold months, short days where the sun goes down really early. It can feel like a really daunting challenge for a lot of folks to make sure that that continuum is consistent, because, you have one really cold day or night and people die, like, quite literally. So, making sure that the opportunities for gaps to exist or to be extended not existing is a serious challenge. And, it's wonderful that your staff are big, open-hearted people who do what they need to do to keep people safe, but it shouldn't require people feeling like they're having to make those really tough decisions and compromise potentially their own health and safety or health and safety of others in order to make sure that folks have their needs met. We have to do better than that. And I know that people know that. It's just a matter of making sure that the people who can help provide the resource so that is a reality that's happening.
Totally. And I feel like people don't know. Like, I feel like the general world doesn't understand the level of ask, like the level of ask that's happening for our colleagues and teams who are out there doing, like, working through this. Even just thinking about every single place where people can warm up is closed, right? Like, I can't go to a library. I can't, like, sneak into a parking garage. I can't sit at friggin', Portage Place. I can't do any of the things that I normally would have done and it's all, and so how dare we not consider the fact that, Main Street Project can't be the only place that is open for people to stay warm. It's minus freaking 40 every single year. We do better than this in lots of ways. Like, I just think about, even in our, like, crappiest, worst political climate, we periodically open places when it's really fucking cold out, and we're not doing that right now, And so I just think that somewhere we need to think about, or, like, move forward in the ways that like you guys did at Sunshine House when this thing started, where you were like, we need to be safe, and we also need to continue to, like, we need to be innovative about how we provide care. Like, there are obviously ways to do it, because all of us, like, I look at all the people in the comments, the work that all of us are doing, and I'm like, we've done it, so it's clearly possible. So the idea that we shouldn't be doing it in some ways just is intolerable to me. Like, if we can rent spaces for people to isolate while they are waiting for a COVID test, then maybe we should freaking rent some of those spaces and house people, so that when Adrian's team's in a van picking people up, they can drop them off at a hotel. Like, what the hell are we doing? So I don't know. Anyways, I have many feelings, obviously, about that. Levi, where are you at?
I'm at home in the wonderful riding of Union Station. I don't really have much to add. I think that both Adrian and Uzoma hit on some really key points. And it's really, I empathize with the difficult decisions that all sorts of organizations have to make on a daily basis, and all sorts of people, because people are making these decisions consciously, because there's not a lot of other options for them. So people, and we've seen this time and time again, in a lot of the folks that we work with, we see the way that people have to take what we might deem as participate in risks, but they're not actually risks. They're calculated, they're intentional, and they're smart decisions that are that really help people cope, and are survival decisions and survival mechanisms. So again, I think that it's really, and I think that the way that staff are responding in these organizations is really reflective of the relationship that they have with the community. So if the staff is saying, no, we're just going to let them hang out in the lobby, that means that these staff are also viewing these people as peers, as community members, as neighbors, as friends, and that they have a mutual responsibility to see that their well-being is being cared for. And I think that during the pandemic, that's always one thing that we lose when we're having kind of macro conversations about policy, and we're having like social conversations about like what's for the common good, is that, and Marsha has, and Uzoma and Karen have been, and yourself, Maggie, and Uzoma, you've all been really good at like kind of reiterating like what's for the common good is not necessarily, you're always going to be missing pieces. And so well, I like to use this time in the winter when we have lots of darkness to sit and to think about stories, and to think about kind of the teachings that have been imparted on me by elders in my family and my community, and the way that I've seen. And so this has really allowed me to kind of impart these things into practices that we've been doing at Sunshine House. But again, it's not different, it's not revolutionary, it's just like working from the relationships that you have with people. And I think that's just really the key in all of this. I did have a better point, but I lost it. So
no, I feel like I love that point about storytelling. And like, I was at Sunshine House today picking up bubbles and calendars, and you guys also have your some of the folks who are like volunteers and participants with their story, like little stories about their lives up on the wall. Is that part, like with photos? Like, what is that project?
So I guess this was 3 years ago. We were assigned, it's kind of it kind of reflects poorly on my inability to work with people who have differing opinions than me. But we were working with this artist who was, so we were working with a number of different artists at that time, and they were interested in kind of collecting stories, and then they were going to do like this. Then they did this exhibition at the Goodwill, and so those photos are part of Gilbert's story, and so Gilbert and Ray and a couple of the mainstays of of JD and the Sunshine Van, that's part of their story. So those photos are kind of telling their stories. And then other people were able to share their stories, and then we were able to kind of transcribe them and laminate them. And then I found them when we were cleaning up some stuff not too long ago, and I found them in this filing cabinet, and I was like, well, let's put these things up. Like, let's see what people want to do with them. And people were like, yeah, put them up. And so then that's what we try to do. And I think for us at the Sunshine House, one of the, like, a lot of the ways that the community has responded and a lot of the things that we've been doing are a result of this kind of direct need and like responding to people making decisions, and it's just trying to eliminate any additional harm. So like when we started doing food programming and we started opening 5 or 6 days a week, and always ensuring that we had at least 10 or 20 leftover dishes, even on days we were closed, so that we could just hand them to people if they showed up at our door. All of those things are really necessary, and they highlight different things, but that's actually not what Sunshine House has been known for. What we've been known for is doing those weird things and doing things like art shows, or doing really shittily produced but highly entertaining bingos, and doing that kind of stuff. So like lately, I think as people have been finding their groove in this, we've been really able to we're starting to see a lot more of like people being open and being more comfortable and like wanting to do more typical Sunshine House type of activities. Because I can tell you firsthand, I'm not the best at like frontline work, but I am really good at like forging through and like creating opportunity for people to do a thing. And so I think that's what we're going to see more in this as this week progresses.
It's the best. It was the highlight for sure of my day to go in and see people that I haven't seen in a really long time and read about their and they're just, the stories on the wall are just random. They're just little random stories about people's lives. It's like someone wrote about canning, and someone wrote about who they're hanging out with and how they hustle, and it's just and I was only there for 3 minutes, but it was good. I was like, oh, it's nice to see people. And it felt like they were talking to me too, So I think that's what I appreciate about so you may not have felt like you got to your point, but your point about storytelling in the depths of winter and also being a good neighbor, if that isn't the freaking lesson we got to learn in this moment in time, I don't really know what is, So good job. And then we have a bunch of folks who are oh my gosh, folks are thinking about how do we find someone to, Meran is talking about also challenges for parents around if they're sick, and who's taking care of their babies, if they're isolating and things like that. And I think those, I love that. I love that you brought that up, Meran, and also thinking about what that must, how hard that is for people to have to make that kind of a choice. I have to take care of my kids and I'm sick, and what do I do? And thinking about what are the ways, how, at what point, at that point, it's neighbors, really. It's we count on our neighbors and community, etc. And so then I think about our public health orders, and how those orders actually are impossible in that kind of a situation. How are we supposed to survive, when we can't connect? So anyways, I don't know what else.
And there's also weird shame about it too, right? Because I know since the beginning of the pandemic, my wife and I have taken care of our niece religiously, on the weekends, and her sister's a single parent. But when I post a picture of that caregiving, or if I share, we had our niece, I have to preface it with well, we've been caregivers under the clause since the beginning of the pandemic. It's what a crazy place to be in, that we can't just share how we take care of each other during it without somebody going, well, it's one person per household and it's this and it's that. And we're quite aware, but it's so weird that you have to just now add that preface to all of your decision making and that little caption, what a weird place to be in.
Well, it really speaks to, the public health orders, I think, have really highlighted for many people in communities which are already well aware of what orders like this can impact, what the impact can be on certain communities and families and individuals. But it's really highlighted the realities of when you have a very specific way of thinking, a very particular way of seeing the world, constructing policy that is intended to help us keep ourselves safe. And that, you know, folks who are thinking about family structures and what nuclear families look like and all of that, if you don't have anything other than what is this like typically cisgender heteronormative way of thinking about family units and providing care and all of that, then you're really eliminating a significant part of the population, right? You're eliminating so many different ways of providing care and family structures and community and housing and all of these things that a lot of people don't need the additional stress of worrying about their neighbor peeking over their fence and, you know, applying their own lens and a set of orders to how, you know, you're providing care within your family unit and your community unit in a way that makes perfectly good sense and is perfectly safe, but maybe doesn't automatically, you know, sit with people in a way that resonates because it's just not in their day-to-day comings and goings of how they see the world. And, you know, it's really important. And I'm really grateful that you brought that up, like your own experience, Adrian, because that's a conversation I've had with many people who, you know, when the orders first started coming out and they're scanning it line by line and they're emailing, like, if I have my grandma coming in or my neighbor who's like, you know, our caregiver coming in, I don't want somebody calling and getting them in trouble. And are we going to get fined? And if we get fined, how do we go? Do we go to the courts to fight the fine? And how do we, like, it just creates an additional stressor that even if you never experience that, even if no one's making that call or you're not getting fined, it's an additional little item in the back of your mind that you really don't need distracting you, contributing to your stress. And so I'm grateful for when folks share what their experiences are and we talk about these things, because people really need to get that the ways in which many folks who have been the architects of policies like this exclude so many people. And it's important for us to talk really openly about what provision of care looks like really looks like for people, in order for us to make sure that those families and experiences are always centered in decision making that that affects all of us. So thank you for bringing that up, Adrian.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, like that's, and then if we also think, if we go back to like when we started seeing the peak of the wave, of this second wave, or our first real wave, I guess, whatever you want to call it, in November and December. And you think about the way that the premier was, the messaging around we've lost our way, as if there's only one way to function. There's only one way to have a home. There's only one way to love. When we know from all of our experiences as queer people, and I myself from as an indigenous person, like our experiences in taking care of one another are not centered on the nuclear family. They're centered on relationships between several different people who all play super integral roles in the formation, particularly around children and the care of the elderly, who have very specific, important roles to take up when we're thinking about care in those ways. And, you know, like up until this moment, that's actually the way we've lost our way. I never really took a super critical, I hated the phrase for a lot of reasons, but that's such a huge point.
Well, I think about like, what if when I was, you know, growing up, teenager or whatever, and thinking about the different times in my life where we had a number of people, you know, like I grew up and we had our family, we had cousins and aunties and uncles and all of that, but almost our entire extended family was in Nigeria. And there was a period of time where we had first cousins, which was a big deal for us, come over to Canada, come over and live in our home. And we had a number of people in the home. And I think back about like, for how long, a long, long time, you know, I'm sleeping on a mattress in the rec room. that was just my living. It was, and I was about that. I was like, we've got our cousins are here, and every day you're coming home like in this little house, and it's busy and it's noisy, and everybody's using the washrooms, all kinds of whatever. I've thought about what would have happened if we experienced a pandemic during those times, and someone in our family is expected to isolate by themselves in a room. Like I think about the ways in which kind of very coldly these expectations are explicitly laid out, and how just completely unattainable and unmanageable and unrealistic that is for so many people, and how the tone, and I can relate to what you're saying, Levi, like that tone and the language around who is responsible for what, and who is failing and succeeding at what during this pandemic, how harmful that is, and the immediate shame that can be attributed to that, and that approach. It's not realistic for so many people. It's not productive. It's harmful, and it really, I think, it attributes something to many folks' experiences, that it perpetuates something really toxic in our communities, that we need to be able to call out and say is unacceptable. And it's frustrating to see that sometimes folks who have that platform, huge platforms on a daily basis, who espouse that kind of narrative, it can feel really challenging to be able to match that platform and push back against that message. Like, we know what we know in our communities, and we know how we communicate and support one another and lift each other up. But I do think it's important for the work that folks are doing, the messages that are being shared, that are positive and affirming and uplifting and supportive and understanding and realistic, that also have space and platform that is accessible and pushes back against narratives that are really not benefiting anybody.
And I think, sorry, I think if you talk about that living situation with your cousins, and you're trying to imagine what that looks like, I think that's not a hard stretch for a lot of people to imagine, particularly people in First Nations communities. And I think about the housing situations for so many of the community, from my own community, where there's a lot of variance in what housing looks like in Couchiching First Nation, but then in more northern communities that I visited, there's no options. Like, so it's not hard for a lot of our relations to kind of imagine what a pandemic looks like when you have anywhere from 2 to 15 people living in a 3-room house. So I think that's a real unfortunate reality. And I think this is part of the reason why anytime that any messaging comes out about what's happening in the North, I don't want to pay attention until I've talked to Marsha first, right? Like, because I know that it's just going to upset me at a level that I don't want to be upset at, because it often upsets me at a level where I can't function for a long period of the day. So, so I just wanted to, like, I don't know why I think it's important that we think about, like, this isn't actually a hard stretch, and why messaging, particularly around shame and shaming people, really has no place in public policy ever in regards to anything.
Should we all just take a pause there? Hey, seriously, Levi, what the fuck? And I think, Adrian, did you want to jump in? I feel like you were are you good? You're okay?
I was just like, when I'm at home and you guys say wonderfully insightful things that touch my heart, I literally am like, yes, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And so I had to, like, keep that inside as you spoke, because I'm participating today. But it's exactly that. Like, it's exactly that.
And also the idea that somehow people, the idea that there is something on an individual level that people can do, Like the idea that it is our individual responsibility instead of a collective responsibility, instead of a policy responsibility is wild. And then the idea that if people are sick, they have to leave their families or communities. Like, what when you are sick, what do you want to do? You want to go home into your bed and you want to like somebody to fucking make you soup. And like this idea that it's the same thing getting put into a hotel or into a shelter or into that like somehow that should feel okay is garbage. Like I've multiple people who've spent time in with COVID and waiting for test results in isolation units, and while it is like good in some ways, it's not where people want to be. It doesn't feel like community, because it isn't community, and like despite the fact that we need this stuff and that it makes sense and I'm glad that it exists, I also think like with proper policy and with a government that was like had a little foresight and could be like, how do we support families instead of how do we prevent one person from passing COVID to another person, it would look different. It would look different anyway.
And it's not a home, right? So like all winter long, I spend a lot of time saying, and whoever knows me who is watching is going to be like, oh gosh, here she goes. But like, we should be working ourselves out of shelters, and we should be, it's not a home. So you can be in the isolation places, but it's exactly what you just said. Like when you're sick, you want to be home. If you don't have a home, how psychologically, emotionally, spiritually are you going to get better, COVID or not, in any way? And better is, self-determined, however you want to label that, but it's not a home. So political will and money, people need homes. Yeah. Like you wouldn't need hotels upon hotels. And, Levi, you're talking about up north, or talking about living conditions in general. So public policy doesn't acknowledge multifamily homes or couples or anything like that when it comes to general housing or public policy around COVID isolation. And it doesn't address for people who have that same, like when you said the emphasis on it being like that nuclear family, not that chosen family. Like people don't want to go places without the people who are important to them, whatever that looks like. And so if you're asking somebody to isolate, even in these institutions, like you're not with your friends, you can't bring your friend, you can't bring the person you rely on the most, you can't, so it's further isolating. So what would make you want to go there? So yeah, I think for me, it boils down to housing, homes, focus on that.
Adrienne, this is the thing that I love about you. Whenever you do news, whenever I hear you on the news, you always talk about how, Main Street projects shouldn't exist. And I love that. I like that you do that.
To Jamil, if he's watching.
Listen, it's true. And every single person who is working in shelter should be thinking that way. We don't need, we want to make sure that people have places to be that feel welcoming and wonderful and like just that like bring spirit to them. And also people just, if we didn't have to have shelters, that would mean people weren't experiencing houselessness. Like that's good. I appreciate that the way that you hold both of those things, like where you're like, here's the work that we're doing and here's what makes sense, and also this other piece as well. So
yeah, we don't stop pushing for it, for sure. Political will and money. I say those two things a lot, and I think the most interesting thing about the pandemic has been the allocation of resources. Like it's been really interesting in a lot of areas where there's been no allocation of resources for a lot of years. The pandemic suddenly opens up opportunities in some ways, which makes me think like, what political will and money, why don't we do those things normally? Like the capability is there, the best practices out there, they're doing multiple things around the world. We just need to do some of those things.
I think it's really interesting when, I hear you, Adrienne, talk about, we shouldn't have to need shelters. That makes complete sense, right? Like there's a lot of services that we should be saying, like, hopefully we get to a place where it's like, I no longer have to do this job. I no longer work this job because we no longer need this service to exist, or at a bare minimum, right? Because we're meeting needs in such a good way that, the resources that people need don't require these interventions that highlight the lack of those needs being met. And it's interesting because I have some interesting conversations with people I've had during this pandemic rather. And you see it with folks. Before the pandemic, you would see it when you talk about a living wage, and folks who would get really frustrated with, like, when I was a certain age, or when I was making $3 an hour, and that was, and I think of it, it's like, that should be fine. Like, you make a minimum wage, and it's like it hurts the people who run companies if we're paying people. And I listen to all of these things. It's similar to when people say, well, if you're gonna just give people housing, like, what about the people who bought their houses? Like, these arguments that sort of, and I listen and I hear people, and I always kind of go back to asking, like, why does that threaten you so much? Like, what is it about making sure that our community members, that our loved ones, our neighbors, fellow human beings are good? Like, what is it about making sure that people's basic needs are met that somehow threatens anything that you've ever done, that and when you dig into a lot of that and you get into those conversations, like, usually, for the most part, I would say people come around and they realize that it's kind of a nonsensical argument that capitalism pushes us into getting into. But one of the other things that I really try to highlight for people is, at the end of the day, when we think about wellness and community safety and connectedness and all of these things, all of those things are enhanced when people have their basic needs met. And that's across the board. It's not just folks who are surviving poverty, and it's for everybody, right? Like, it's the reality that our communities overall just do better. Our schools, our relationships, our workplaces, all of it is just better and brighter when folks aren't having to worry about surviving, and folks aren't having to worry about the things that nobody should have to worry about. And this pandemic has really, I think, exposed, it's like got us showing our whole asses in a lot of ways, in terms of what our priorities are, where we're willing to put our energy, and what the best bang for our buck is in terms of investment. And a lot of people have been shouting things from the rooftops for years that we all know makes sense. And we're seeing it now in this way that is irrefutable. And I keep saying that I really believe that the time that we're in right now is such an opportunity. It is such an opportunity to engage people in ways that people want to be engaged in. And it's an opportunity for us to reimagine the way that we make decisions around these things. And I'm really hoping, and I'm going to be an optimist on this, that some of the folks who are resistant to some of these conversations before, I think, are a bit more open. And it's not that I think that we should have to, beg and plead people to engage in these things, but I do think the more people who are invested in these, in this dialogue and actioning what we've been talking about for a long time, the better. And so, I hope that people who are watching and who are paying attention, and I know I have it on good authority that there are people who are watching these conversations who probably would never admit they're watching these conversations. FYI to everybody on this panel tonight. I hope it's those folks too who reach out in their own way and, like, let's get to work. Let's really get to work and reimagine what this can look like here in Manitoba. I don't think we should be waiting for anybody else to get it done and figure it out. We have the opportunity here to do something really special. And I believe that we're moving in that direction. I really do.
My optimism, as you know, waxes and wanes. Mostly wanes. But I really appreciate your optimism. But you have conversations with folks every day who I don't have conversations with. And so you have conversations with folks. I live in a bubble, and I'm the first to admit it. I'm like, I was raised in a very open household, and we had lots, and I was raised around a lot of really political people who had very strong wills. And so that's always kind of where all of my beliefs come from. And then I've never actually, occasionally I get to venture out and I hate it. Like I don't like it outside my bubble. It's really scary. And I'm like, you people actually fucking think this way? But no, I appreciate it. And I actually agree with you on this point. I think that we're seeing a lot of folks, and I think that we're seeing a lot of data actually come out that supports this, that a lot of folks, when actually questioned and interrogated about beliefs around things like pharmacare, around dental care, around universal basic income, and around less money for police and more money for other things, I think those are conversations that people are already having. And as long as they have access to truthful information, and I'm a firm believer that if people have access to truthful information, regardless of your political affiliations, we all of us as individuals and collectively have the ability to look at things and change things. So I can change and I've done it several times through this series, my position on a number of different things, because I've been presented sometimes very gently and sometimes in a not so gentle way with information that I don't necessarily agree with at first. And I believe that everyone has that kind of capability. So I think I actually, right now, at this moment in time, I share that optimism. So I will dedicate some energy to this cause in a lot of ways, because I think it's really important. I think there was a phrase that I heard the other day is like, if you shoot for the moon, you might hit a duck and then you'll get to eat. So, so I think that's just my goal. I'm just going to keep shooting for the moon and maybe I'll get some duck.
Yeah, I really love that.
Me too.
I really love that. I've never heard that. Yeah. It's oddly uplifting.
It is oddly uplifting. You guys, who knew that our like -40, no sunshine COVID convo was going to take such a positive turn? Not me. Look, we shot for the moon. We got some duck. We're living in the future. Anybody else want to? Should we have a cup? Like we're rounding the end of our hour. Should we? I know. It just kind of went in this good way. But what about like? Are you guys now that okay? So I have two questions. One, have you gone shopping? And two, I know me neither. And two, do you have like what is your like people in the house? I will confess, first of all, I was going to go shopping, but there was a lineup outside. There was like 15 people waiting outside in the -30. I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't need anything that bad. It wasn't that I was worried about COVID, but I was like, I don't want to be cold.
It was like flashbacks to trying to get into the club at like 19.
Seriously.
And you just had the stamina. You're like, I don't mind. No.
I know. I waited outside of Happenings, no problem for like an hour, but I was drunk. It was different. So, anyways.
One of the reasons I became a drag queen was so that I never had to wait in line.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's real. Yeah. What about like, what are we like new COVID rules? What is anything changed for you guys, or is it kind of business as usual?
I'm not going out. I'm not going shopping. I certainly understand why people are so eager to get out and do things.
Really?
We know this, not everyone's navigating the restrictions the same way. But I take really seriously mitigating any risk of, contracting COVID or contributing to community transmission. And that's like, I have a lot of privileges, right? I have a lot of ways that I can get my needs met and not have to, go to the mall or go to wherever. And so if I can do that, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to stay away. The one thing that for me has been really hard in the winter months, and that's just because, taking care of this in the cold weather is really, really important. And there's certain ways that I should be able to protect my hair. And I was hoping to be able to go in and get my hair twisted and have different things, done that like, I didn't listen growing up. I didn't listen to my mom. I didn't listen to do this to your hair and do these. Like my siblings are all really good about, I'm not that way. And so I would love to be able to go and sit in a chair and get it taken care of. But I'm not there yet. I don't want to put in 3-4 hours in a space doing all that. So I'm going to walk around and do the best that I can. it was kind of wild seeing some of the videos and pictures of folks going out shopping this weekend. No judgment. Like I saw a lot of people being very critical, and I don't really have time for that. Like I said, I think people are doing the best that they can. And I think that it's incumbent on those folks with access to greater resource and information and to share that and support people so that we can do the best that we can within our capacity. But no.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm like, I don't have a bad feeling towards anyone shopping either, but I'm just like, I like to know what people do once the rules change. I'm like curious about what's going to happen, you know? Like, I'm like, okay, now that the rules have changed, can I like bring my kid over to somebody's house? Like, can I, you know, like those are the things that I'm like thinking, I miss people. Like, this has been grueling.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for folks who are like, and I think about teenagers a lot too, like I spent a lot of time at the same hotel mall when I was a teenager, and like I didn't ever buy anything. So, you know, like I appreciate that there's like, and they can't even see each other right now because they were home for the longest time. Anyways, these are the things I think about. Levi, Adrian, what are you guys up to? Anything different?
There's traffic. I don't like it. Like, I feel like since I kept, and that again is my privilege driving a car, but I worked since April. So I had some really quiet street time for a long time. And it's really weird. Like my environmental scan of seeing people increase because I kept working when people didn't. And so I really notice, like, for me, you know, I'm the one who does the shopping, and I like some of those things have stayed the same and doesn't change because of last weekend. But I just noticed the increase of people and the increase of like activity, and where for many months it was just very barren. And so that's been really unsettling in a lot of ways for me. My life has kept steady, but yeah, the world around me, I feel like, is ramping up again. And that's a really weird feeling.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Adrian. I'm always like, oh, like feel like I forgot how to drive properly in traffic because for so long I was like, there's no one here. Let's do it. Now I'm like, oh, shoulder check, Margaret. Like, do your proper things. Anyways, Levi, what about you? Has anything shifted for you?
No, not really. Like, again,
Same thing.
I'm a lot like a lot of other people is like, because I work with the public, and because I work with the people that we work with, there's always just like that fear of like, if they bring it to me, I'm way more well equipped to get treatment, to get, you know, not stereotyped, or if I have to go to an emergency room, I know that I'm probably going to get good care and I can defend for myself if I'm getting shitty care.
Yeah.
So I really got to be mindful of that. Not to say that I'm 100% perfect at following guidelines all the time. I have made some weird decisions through the course of the last year. Hey, some of those are public knowledge and some of those belong where they belong.
Oh my God, there's gonna come a moment in time where we have to do a like sketchy shit you did during COVID, because I feel like we all have a few of those.
I think what we could do with that is we could submit them to you in advance, and then we could make the audience guess. Yeah, who did what?
That's a great idea.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then we would never know. We would just say in our private chat like who that was.
Everyone else would just have to guess.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, the one thing that I did do is one of the things I was going to do is I was going to, like, if things actually did calm down and numbers went down, I was going to go home to Ontario and to visit my mom in Brandon. But now that those aren't going to be things I'm going to do, I'm not thinking about those things until maybe spring. But I do have a brother and sister-in-law who live in Winnipeg. So I checked with them and I'm like, who are your two visitors? Because I do miss all of there's 6 of them at that house, 6 nieces and nephews. And so I miss all of those weirdos. So I'm going to go visit them, I think probably in the next weekend. And they did come over and drop some stuff off on Saturday, it was really nice to like have human beings like in the home and just be like, oh my God, I'm not like scared I'm not scared that the next knock on the door is going to be the police. Because we've seen that in the neighborhood. Like we've seen police going and doing COVID checks, and I just think that's terrible.
Yeah,
But I also was telling Jarita yesterday, or the day before, I was telling Jarita and Angeline that if I never have to step foot into a store again, I will be very happy.
Well, and all of our friends are like making shit now. Like Nyx is doing this like pudgy teas kind of thing that I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to go shopping. I can buy these cute fucking things from my friends who are all like, let's start a tiny business. So I'm here for that, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, you guys, it is 7:57. Are you watching anything good on television?
Well, it's funny you asked about my superpower.
Adrian, do you have a superpower you want to share with us before we say goodnight?
No.
So random. What do you mean? I'm confused.
Last time I was like, I made everybody say what their superpower would be. If they could have like one superpower, I was like, think about it. We're gonna keep talking, and then we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I told you I'm a fan. Like I'm quoting previous episodes. Like,
Can I say one thing? Actually, it's
Yeah.
not anything I'm watching, but it's something that is going into its final season. And I'm really sad about Insecure. They announced
Last season?
the last season. The next season will be their last season, and I was quite devastated, to be honest, when I heard that. I didn't think I'd be so affected by television news like that, but so
Yeah.
I'm sad already. Yeah,
Fair. It's so good.
so good. Yeah,
Oh.
good. Yeah. I've got nothing else. I can tell you what not to watch. Don't watch. I watched Brightburn, I think it's what it's called. It's like some alternative Superman origin story, and it really scared me. It's very violent. Don't watch it. It
Don't
really
watch that.
ruined that origin story for me. I didn't appreciate it at all.
Don't watch that one. I've been watching Drag Race UK, and I'm really into this season so far. I don't know if folks are watching that one. Anyways, I can't tell if Meiran is responding to your television hatred or something different that you said. Uzoma.
I think it was the television, the sadness about Insecure.
She says, yeah. No shows. Oh my gosh. All right.
I'm really sad that we didn't talk about my weekend excursion to the Yukon on my private jet.
Yeah,
I thought it was too sensitive.
Second. Oh my god. Oh my god. Do you want to?
The audacity of people, really, like the wealthy. Just what's that? Like, eat the wealthy. Seriously.
100%. Bold motherfuckers. Holy crap.
Crazy.
If people don't know that story and they want to get really angry before they go to bed this evening, find that story about the couple in BC, and then they got fined $900.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, they were like, I'd pay $900 for my fucking vaccine. Like, that's nothing.
They chartered a jet there.
Yeah, I know,
Here's the most absurd thing. So then, remember when I say I wax and wane on the support of things? So then I was on Reddit and I was reading like the people's comments, and they're like, "Well, he lost his $10.6 million job," and I was like, "Who cares? Like, if he made $10.6 million, he has several lifetimes. He's going to be in a situation that even looks like me or you."
Yeah.
Like, and I'm doing pretty well for myself, and he has lifetimes to get to this. I'm like, screw him. Yeah. Anyways.
It's
What are your superpowers, Adrian?
I'm just canceling my jet after this. Sorry. It's embarrassing now.
Oh my god. Yeah. I cannot. Those stories. Anyways, yeah. We know what we're going to do. We're going to hold on to all the things that Uzoma said about freaking like talking to each other and that you said, Levi, about changing each other's minds through conversation and like feeling out where we can like come together and making change that way. And like someday we're just going to like put our energy, things will happen to those people, fingers crossed. And otherwise we're going to focus on that piece because like, fuck those people.
Yeah.
Feel vaccines. Jesus.
When Adrian was talking about how Main Street Project shouldn't exist and like places like that shouldn't exist, it reminded me of this. One of the elders I worked for, who was my first boss when I moved home at Wichitawin, he said everyone every week should be doing one thing that makes their job obsolete.
Yeah.
in child family services. Everyone, we all have a role in doing this. And I was like, and that's in all of the work that I've been able to do since. That's always been something that I carry with me. Those are always in the back of my mind. You should always be doing something that makes your job obsolete.
Yeah. And just in case, my funders or the political powers to be are watching, I did not say Main Street Project shouldn't exist. We should be working ourselves into a different line of service, or reimagining, as Uzoma said, reimagining how we're doing things.
Man, welcome to COVID Convos, Adrian, where Levi and I take things that you guys say and make you be like, what the fuck?
I caught on. I got it.
We get it. It's reasonable. We all want to be working ourselves out of having to do things that we want. We want a different world. And so that's the work that we're doing. And we're doing it in different directions and with different places, but we want it. We are all imagining better futures. And so I feel like you're in the clear. We know that you're going to be around for a while. All right, everybody, can we leave it there? Okay, thanks, team. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and for all the comments today. We freaking love you guys. It is hard in the world and it's cold out, so snuggle up and we'll talk to you when we can. Bye, everybody.